The laws of physics were developed over time, and it's kind of like you can test that and verify over, like it's been verified over and over and over again that this is, yep, this turns out to be true every time.
Progress and innovation and growth and invention, like all of these things could not exist without somebody changing their mind. Maybe there's something to that. If it continues the current decline, or maybe steepens, then maybe people would start being like, oh, you know what? Like, maybe we can, be good people without religion. Maybe we can survive without religion.
Welcome to another kitchen sink microscopy. I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and we'd love it if you'd like and share this video, subscribe to the channel, all that jazz. It's helps the channel.
Well, I must be Casey Rochford by process of elimination. We would also really enjoy it if you'd hang out to the end to hear the song that we've labored over with our labor of love. Just so that you would have a nice, unique outro song that probably fits with the theme of the episode. How cool is that? What other show does that? Come on. Anyway, what should we talk about today?
Well, I think we should address the long-awaited question that we started a little bit earlier about religion in schools.
It feels like it was a couple of weeks ago,
but yeah, I know.
Also, as if it were just like 10 minutes ago.
It feels like yesterday, but yeah, it's a couple of weeks. yeah.
Like the age of consent for teaching religion.
Yeah, well, and just like religion teaching in schools, and I know this, it's something that lots of people feel passionate about, either in favor of or against. Religion in schools. Some people don't even want any religion whatsoever in schools, which I think is kind of dumb. Like, it's a part of humanity, so we ought to be teaching people about that. Like, we teach them about everything else. Well, not everything, but a lot of other things.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to have like different aspects of religion taught each year, treat it like a history class where like there's a little bit of a different theme each year.
Yeah.
Like you could go into all the holy wars, for instance, like a historical overview of the violence from religion. And then you could also go into like the sociological impacts and, how it benefits people and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And it could be entirely like devoid of biased discussion about one religion over another.
Well, and maybe that's a good starting point, is to like cover those kinds of things, like the broader picture. But maybe also you could have more targeted classes that are like about a particular religion, kind of like language classes, right? You have your French class and your Spanish and German and whatnot. Maybe they could be one that's like, this would satisfy a lot of people. Is like, oh, you have the option of taking like a class in Buddhism or something, and Christianity or whatnot, and so that you could just kind of like, the students could learn about those things in that way.
Yeah. And I wonder if we approached it from a more critical thinking standpoint, like introduce it when the children are old enough to kind of understand what religion is, that perhaps their family believes a certain thing, and others might believe another thing, and but they aren't necessarily like, I don't know, like shoveled into any one box, right?
Mhm.
At least that would be like optimal, I
Yeah.
suppose, because I don't know that there's really like a way to prevent, like if you said like, for the sake of argument, age 10 or something is
Mhm.
like when you can start teaching about religion. Well, you can't really stop parents from indoctrinating their own children. So then you got to wonder what happens then when you start teaching about all these other religions. Is that going to create some kind of dichotomy in their head, or is it going to create some sort of friction where they're like adamantly protesting the class? Like, no, this is all wrong because I'm right.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and there are some religions that don't want kids to be taught about any other religion too.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be, like you said, some friction there. And yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, my family was all Christian and stuff, and from as early as I can remember, like that was part of the family,
Mm.
like prayer and going to church and all that stuff. And so it's like, if we wait too long to start teaching about like the broader religion kind of topics, then there could be issues there. Like maybe they've already been established right before we start going into that. So maybe waiting is a bad idea.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Uh, oh gosh.
Yeah, it's quite a quandary, isn't it?
Well, and then you had mentioned something about like you know, some people don't want religion at all in schools, and in America anyway, in public education, it's typically really not allowed until you get, of course, into like a college level, maybe. But um, the one interesting thing is I took a mythology class at a public school in high school years, a mythology class.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what distinguishes other mythology from religion today.
Ooh, yeah, you're right.
Mythology were religions
Yeah, that's a good point.
at one
Huh.
point, like, but how did people come to the obvious conclusion that those were wrong and all these other fantastical stories are probably right? What?
Well, maybe because yeah, that's a good point. Huh. Yeah.
I mean, if anyone could answer that with like something that makes sense, please tell me, because I never understood that.
Yeah.
And in fact, taking the mythology class was really what first opened my mind to the idea of like, wait a minute, aren't all religions mythology?
Yeah.
So like,
maybe well wait, okay. Here we go. So early on, start with mythology.
mhm.
Like teach about all the mythological things in the past and work your way up to talking about current day practiced religions. How about
Huh,
that?
huh, yeah, yeah. Hmm. I, it would be an interesting think tank to do something like that, and then at a certain age, instead of an age of consent, at a certain age, tell them like, from here on out, it's a critical thinking exercise. You you probably have a feeling by now whether or not religion on the whole is onto something,
Hmm.
or if it's mythology and it's all filled with metaphor and allegory and things like that. And from there on, take a kind of debate approach to it.
Yeah.
So like you take coursework with that kind of um I don't know, backing behind it, like if you're more in the spiritual realm, you might take certain courses, and if you're in the more like um agnostic realm, let's say, you might take courses that support that a little bit more, maybe like sciences and math and stuff like that. And over here like arts and literature and
Well, yeah, but I think kids, sorry, I'm shifting a lot. My chair's broken, so I keep almost falling off of it. The seat is like, yeah. So if I'm in the wrong position, I'm like, whoa, about to fall off the chair.
patreon.com/KSM vidcast and help Eric get a new chair.
Yeah, exactly. What was I going to say? It's important that we have that everybody have kind of like an exposure to many ways of thinking, not just their own, not like their family's way, or what they currently believe, but like everything.
Yeah,
I think that's really important.
But I mean that would be interesting, to tie critical thinking to religious thinking and kind of put it really to the test. Like create sort of like a goal each year for whichever path you choose, and be like, over the course of the year, from what you learn and things that you think of and things that you observe in your everyday life, I want you to argue for such and such thing. And at a certain age, they could create their own thesis, right? Like, I'd like to convince people of this or that, and like whatever, they're talking about, whether it's religion or politics or any of that, like, it's a good exercise in critical thinking.
Oh, sure,
if
yeah.
it's done correctly.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Like the way religion is taught now is antithetical to critical thinking. It's all about like, this is correct, don't question it, which is the polar opposite of scientific method.
Well, yeah. and it does kind of almost defeat itself, its own argument, in that, like, if you can't withstand an argument, like a counter argument, or even entertain it, then you can't claim to be like definitely correct.
Right.
Like, things that are correct have been tested and found to be continually correct.
Yeah.
Like
growth,
laws
innovation.
of physics, right? The laws of physics are not laws because people just decided and wrote them down. Like,
right.
And that's something too, like legal laws, right? Like political laws and stuff, that in the past they used to be things that were kind of like culturally tested and found to be like valid. So it's like, okay, well, we all agree that murder is wrong, right? Like, that is a law. But like the laws of physics were developed over time, and it's kind of like you can test that and verify over, like, it's been verified over and over and over again that this turns out to be true every time.
Yeah. And things like progress and innovation and growth and invention, like all of these things could not exist without somebody changing their mind, and to just kind of showcase that and really drive that home while teaching about religions. I feel that would go a long way toward bettering humanity.
Sure.
However it turns out, if people start, if the inclination to be religious starts to go on the rise again, maybe there's something to that. If it continues the current decline, or maybe steepens, then maybe people would start being like, oh, you know what? Like, maybe we can, be good people without religion. Maybe we can survive without religion. Like, why?
And then
Israel
the Abrahamic
and Palestine are at it again, and it's all over fucking religion.
And the Abrahamic God will be like weeping in the skies, like, oh, nobody cares about me, just like holding on to Apollo, like, oh, I know, brother, I know, they've forgotten about us. And then Santa comes up like, oh, man, it sucks.
All God things come to an end.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's like I'd mentioned before in the previous kind of seed episode, the lightning strikes twice. Um, it it benefits people. Like if you believe your religion is correct and you're intent on convincing others, it benefits you to know about all the other religions or the non-religion, essentially. Like if there's atheists and stuff, you should really understand those things so you can craft an effective argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you
Yeah.
you see it all the time with like people trying to go out there and convince others that Christianity is the right way or whatever, and they're talking to atheists and they're like, they have these assumptions like all atheists think this or they all work this way, which is totally
Yeah.
not correct. And like, if they simply understood more, and this is why I don't this is the thing, I don't think they want to teach these things because they want to create that antagonistic stance where it's like us versus them, like, oh, all those pagans out there, non-believers and da da da. And they don't want people to understand because there's a risk if they start to understand that they might drift away.
Yep.
And so they've got to maintain that ignorance. And I mean, it's the same thing with politics too, right? It's the same
Absolutely.
thing. You gotta
Absolutely.
gotta gotta paint the other side as like the bad guy. And if there's any kind of like crossover whatsoever, like for instance, if there's a Republican who uh, is in favor of some kind of pro-choice legislation or is just simply pro-choice, they'll be shunned by their party. And if there's a Democrat who's like all 2A and stuff like that, like all about guns, they'll be shunned by their party. Or if they're like, maybe there's a Democrat who's like, you know what, like I I'm in favor, I'm pro-life actually, and they'll be like, what the, you're not a real Democrat. Like, but they have to do that because if that's allowed, then people might start getting along, right? You might find that, oh, hey, wait a minute, we're not all that different after all. And that's harmful for the system that wants to control people. And religion works that way too. Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if the Christians and the Islam followers start like hanging out together, like, well, that's a problem. Or like whoever, like, you name it. I guess
Yeah.
the Buddhists are the only ones that are like, yeah, whatever, bro. Doesn't matter.
Well, at lunch today, we were all sitting around the table, and the topic came up of how my wife escaped East Germany shortly before the fall of the Berlin Wall, and so the conversation kind of drifted into uh, how the communist government structure in uh, the German Democratic Republic,
Mm.
uh, kind of came into power, and they were vilifying capitalism and so on. And our daughter asked, "Well, what is capitalism?"
Mm.
And so my wife asked me to grab a book, and she kind of used that to help explain. Um, I didn't really jump in on that because that's something that should be explained in German, and my German is not so great. Nicht so gut. Um, and so like when she came to understand it, then we started talking, and the realization was starting to come to all of us that, like, my wife said to me, you know what, when I was reading the definition of capitalism, it sounded like it was a really bad thing. And I was like, well, it kind of is. And she was like, but the communism was terrible. And I was like, well, yeah. And it's because, like, you can't necessarily paint with the same brush when you're looking at economics and politics or religion. Like, these are all like schools of thought that
No.
have their place. They have their time and their place, each of them. And I think somewhere in the middle between like, let's say socialism and democracy is a good, like capitalism still exists, but it's in check a little bit. And that it was really cool to like hear a young mind like inquiring about that,
Mhm.
and kind of making some realizations just based on you know
Well,
the
and
world through their eyes, the
that
world through young
that's
eyes.
yeah, and I think that's the key thing, in that, like, to come to a real understanding of things, we shouldn't be telling people this is how it is, right? Like,
Right.
oh, communism is bad, capitalism's good, or capitalism's good, communism, whatever. Like
Yeah.
that like it should be like, this is the agreed upon definition of this. And here, give examples and things, and just provide information, not
Mhm.
a judgment call, essentially, like, oh, Christianity is the best. um
Yeah.
America is the greatest country on earth, that kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
no.
Because I mean, like, if you don't have a rounded education of these things, you come to put all your faith in one thing or the other.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, I think the inherent problem with communism as it has more or less existed in our history and current times is really only at fault because there's these asshole dictators. Like I don't think you need to tell people exactly what to do if you
Well,
just set the system up in
no,
a
no. in
logical
fact
manner.
in fact like, if you real true communism can only exist in an anarchist society.
That's true.
Like,
Yeah.
you can't have any central authority, because, I mean, that basically nullifies the concept of communism.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
like,
I,
so it's like, maybe I'm a communist in a way. I mean,
I
in
mean,
a way, I kind of am.
communes do kind of tend to like form an alpha, if you will. Like
Well,
there's always some kind of like tier system,
okay,
but
so there's nothing wrong with having, like, an elder that you trust, right? Oh, this is the guy, the guru, who knows all this stuff. So when we need help or settling a dispute, we go to this guy. But you shouldn't be self-appointed, right? You're right
right.
that hierarchical structures naturally emerge based on, like, need and skills and knowledge and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
a voluntary hierarchy is not harmful. Like, in
Huh.
my work, I don't know everything. I don't know how to do everything, and there's people who know how to do certain things, and we all come to each other when we are, like, stuck, right?
I'll tell you what I really like about mythology
Mm,
is that they kind of understood that
mhm.
from way back then. Like you can't have centralized power. The reason there's multiple gods is because they all have their specialty.
Yeah,
And when somebody needed the god of war, they went to the god of war. They didn't go to the goddess of love.
they didn't just go. Everybody didn't just go to Zeus, right?
Right.
you know
Right. Like that's kind of dumb, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Like,
it's like, in that kind of system, Zeus is sort of like the overseer of the gods, right?
mhm,
If my mythological understanding is correct, um, he very rarely actually intervened, like, kind of a manager of the gods, and each
right.
god managed their own domain, right? Whatever it might be, and that's actually, it's very much like in a workplace, right?
Mhm,
You have your boss, who's kind of isn't isn't like, your boss isn't necessarily, well, if they're a good boss, isn't necessarily uh, nitpicking on the day to day, every little detail. They're just kind of looking at the big picture and trying to make sure everything's coordinated and running smoothly. And if there's a big decision to be made, they make it. They're the one that's like, hey, I there's got to be somebody at the end of the day who can, like, because, I mean, sure, you can have true democracy, right, where everybody votes and the majority wins, but there's also sometimes a need for a tiebreaker, and there's
yeah.
also a need for somebody to be like, hey, you know what, this situation, y'all are ganging up on this person, and yeah, you all like 75% of the people voted to toss this person out of the boat, but like this is wrong. So there needs to be a little bit of that, but not like dictatorial control. That's where things go wrong. And honestly, in the US, people talk about the US as being like, oh, it's capitalist and we're a democracy or whatever. No, we're essentially a dictatorship. We just don't, it's just not so overt.
I think the thin line between us becoming a dictatorship is the Constitution, as as
Yeah.
weak as it's kind of becoming, and the older it gets, let's say. Um,
Well, and things
but
get chipped away at too. I mean, the Second Amendment doesn't apply. The First Amendment is starting to be like crumbling a little bit, and the Fourth Amendment, fuck that, it's like gone.
well,
It doesn't even matter.
the 10th Amendment, even
Yep,
like
yep. Like, I mean, it's just, and it's just text. It has no real teeth. It's just like the
right.
courts are the only barrier against a dictatorship essentially becoming official. But I mean, the system itself, it's not like there's one individual who's a dictator, but in the
Yeah.
US, the system is dictatorial. We might as well have a dictatorship in this
And
country.
the way that the Constitution is much like the Bible, it's a double-edged sword,
Mm-hmm.
where like people's faith in it kind of holds it together a little bit, but their faith in it also prevents them from making it better.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, the founding fathers
Yeah.
were perfect.
Well, the founding fathers are akin to the mythological gods at that point.
Right.
You know? Like, and
I mean,
this is the point.
there was a recent episode where we were talking about like term limits, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you mentioned that, I mean, they even wrote that into the Constitution, but it wasn't until 1951 that they were like, wait a minute, that's a bad idea. So it's like, yeah, that's probably one of the best examples of needing to change the Constitution and the Bible, even.
Mm-hmm.
Like all this stuff should be, it's fine. It's fine to have spiritual feelings, spiritual beliefs. It's probably a great thing, actually.
Well, and
But
certainly like even organized religion. The thing about it is, and this is, I recently went to my uncle's funeral at a church, and he was very big on, he was very religious, very spiritual guy. And like, yeah, so it was actually a good service. Like, it was, they had a bunch of cool music playing, and like a band playing music and stuff. And he actually had requested that they play "Staying Alive" by the Bee Gees as everybody exited, which is cool because they're like, okay, he requested this song as everybody leaves, so we can leave now. And then they cue it up, and it's like playing that. Everybody just busted up. Yeah, yep. But the thing is, so my uncle too was very humanitarian. They actually, people were like, yeah, you could kind of describe him as kind of left. He was like eco, recycle, like take care of the planet long before that was popular. And it like took care of people, wanted to help people believe that was what God was calling him to do. And so, but they were talking about that, and that like what the church did, helping the community and stuff. And that's the good side. Like,
yeah,
that brings people together to help other people, even people they may not have helped otherwise, right? Like help everybody. And there's a benefit in that, and because it can motivate people regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of their independent philosophies and stuff. Like, hey, we all have this particular faith, and Jesus told us, we need to take care of the children or something like that, and all children everywhere on the planet, no matter who they are. And that can be beneficial, because I honestly can't think of very many other kind of social systems that could actually provide that, honestly. General spirituality, maybe like seeing the earth as like one living organism, and like we have to take care. That's kind of how I see it, is like humanity, we've got to like take care of everything, right? Like everybody is we're all like, ultimately in my
Yeah.
view, it comes down to the fact that it's like the only border on this planet that counts is the one, it's the atmosphere, basically the border
Yeah.
between earth and space. And like we're all stuck on this dirt ball. We don't even know if there's anything else. I mean, we know there's planets out there, but are there other people, other beings? Don't know.
It's
So
interesting.
like this is it, and we got to take care of each other.
Very few religions focus on environment at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, of course, there are like, pagan and Native American belief
Yeah.
systems that are very much in tune with the earth and respecting it and give the give and take cycle and blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
But in the absence of that, like people uh, can't find these answers in their Bible or whatever. They
Mm-hmm.
turn to politics.
Yeah.
Like they jump from one faith-based thought process to the next rather than science or like
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
own eyeballs, you know
Mm-hmm.
and they start like denying climate change, like yeah, well, that's just the Democrats is saying that,
Yeah.
and
Well,
it's like,
that's the thing. It's like I don't. That's a weird one. I don't understand how that is a political thing.
right, why
It shouldn't be
why
divided. That shows you there's a problem there. You know,
that and vaccines, like I cannot figure
yeah.
that out. Why is that political?
Well, and a lot of things are divided along religious lines. Similarly,
Mm-hmm.
like things that have nothing to do with religion become religious in their in the way people think about them.
Yeah, but you know what, like going back to the whole age of consent concept, children have kind of a natural instinct, let's say, for the most part, to treat others equally, to not see color,
Mm-hmm.
to um, share and help others, and just generally be kind. Like
Yeah.
it's only when hormones start kicking in that all that goes haywire.
For a brief time, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and
you're right. Like in the beginning, like when you're a very young child, you're extremely selfish. But then it's like, well, this is how society is organized naturally. Is like you are selfish, but you realize that being altruistic at times can benefit you by benefiting somebody else, like mutual, like it's a synergistic effect, right? Everybody, there's more benefit going around than you've provided to that, just that one person. And
yeah,
sharing actually helps. And they're like, there are like invisible benefits, like feeling good, right? Like watching your friend laugh and smile and be happy and that kind of thing.
yeah,
That is not a material benefit. And people realize that very quickly. Kids, like they figure it out. They work together, they help each other. If there's conflicts, they figure out ways of resolving things. And again, natural hierarchies emerge where it's like, oh, well, okay, Joshua, he's the guy who we're going to say is going to be the final word on our conflict and stuff like that. Or he may step in and break up a fight or something. Like he's just a natural leader, I guess, or whatever. And that's, there's nothing wrong with leaders. I think a long time ago I did a minute microscopy about leaders.
uh-huh.
And like being an anarchist, people are like, oh, like, yeah, leaders, like, oh, there should be no leaders, no hierarchies. And like, well, no, not, there shouldn't be, in terms of there being an official like structure, right? An officially designated structure. But human beings in their interactions, just those things form. Like you have people who are just natural leaders, and they kind of take the reins when there's chaos, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you do need that. If everybody for themselves and like the building is burning down, well, everybody's gonna die. So you need somebody to step in and be like, hey, stop, okay, this is where we're going, we're going to go this way, and take charge and get through that situation. That's an okay thing. or you know, in like a company, having your boss or whatever that's experienced and is kind of heading, you know, sitting at the helm of the ship, so to speak.
Mhm. Yeah, and in that discussion earlier today with my family, um, my stepdaughter said, in speaking about East Germany, uh, and the whole idea of like, I was just following orders. She was like, I don't understand how anyone could follow an order to just shoot an innocent person.
Mhm.
And I kind of felt tears in my eyes. And I was like, as long as you don't understand that, you're a good person. Like,
Oh, ooh,
like,
that's gonna get me teary eyed too. Yeah, yeah, you're right.
like, and that's how we are programmed to.
Mhm.
Well, not even programmed, just like by nature. That's how we think. We get
On our
programmed.
own, yes,
Yeah,
like
we
without.
get programmed to think that there's some kind of valor or virtue in blindly following orders of your leaders or
Yeah,
people with power. And
yeah, yeah. Well, it's the same in politics as it is in religion.
Mhm.
um you know, people will do whatever, like a lot of heinous acts have been performed, like that I was only following orders, or God told me to do this or something like that kind of thing, or my pastor said this or that, like, you know, your political leader or something, and or it's, oh, for king and country or something like that, like that's dangerous. That kind of thinking, it, yeah, that's pretty much, if you think about it, think of all of the major heinous acts that have happened throughout history, and it all comes down to that, like that religious thinking, that blind faith and obedience to a system that, well, the only reason is like, the only reason it's in charge is because it said it's in charge. You know,
Yeah,
it hasn't proven anything. It's just like, yep, I'm the boss now.
yeah. If
Like,
not religion itself, definitely religious thinking
mm-hmm.
is at the core of 100% of the world's global conflicts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's all like our way is right just because,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
there's no real like rational justification for that, but we're willing to kill people for it. So
Yeah, exactly. Well, oh man, that's true.
that's
Oh
sad.
man.
Um,
Yeah.
this is why we can't have nice things.
I know. uh yeah.
And
I guess the question is like, how do we undo that? Like, I've undid it to myself. You know, like me,
right,
I have like unfolded all of those creases that were programmed in on my own, but it's
yeah.
like I'm only myself. I There's a whole other planet, the whole rest of the planet out there that's
Oh,
still clutching on to these old ways of thinking.
like earlier, I think I started to say something, but um, I forgot to like finish my point. uh as a kid I was all like buying into the Catholicism stuff, but at the core, like, I never really like felt like it made sense. And I asked a lot of questions, and that was not so well received. um I think in a way that could be analogous somewhat to what it's like to feel at odds with your gender as opposed to your sex.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, I think it's, you're going down a path that's pretty interesting, that I think it will be very enlightening.
uh-huh.
Because it ties into politics and religion as well. Like the whole, I was only following orders, or why, how is it possible that the atrocities that Nazis conducted against the Jewish people, how can that even be possible? How could somebody sleep at night knowing they've like exterminated that many people in cold blood? You know, like
Yeah.
it it's like, you know, like, why, how did the Nazis even get control of Germany, because obviously we can look back and be like, well, that was dumb, but where's the point where, like, if people start recognizing things, people kind of are complacent, I guess, or don't think things are as big as they are, or like it's a social pressure sort of thing, like, oh well, I don't want to say something because my neighbor is going to judge me, or my friends will judge me because I'm an outsider, or a dissident or something like that. And I think the same thing happens in religion, like, because I had a similar experience to you. Like, they were always like, oh, you feel the presence of Jesus and prayer, and God will speak to you. And God never spoke to me. Like, I have my own internal voice in my head, but like that, I was always kind of like, well, what are they even talking about? Here I am praying and I'm not getting any feedback from God. I'm like, well, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm just not religious enough or something. But it's like, I wouldn't voice that to other people because for fear of being ridiculed or something, or judged.
Yeah. I've probably told this story before, but I did actually see Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think it was around the fourth grade, right when I started getting bullied. And I was driving with my mom to the library. Well, my mom was driving.
I was like,
I was way too young for that.
You got started early.
Just ahead of me on the road, I saw this like apparition, let's say, of a totally white Jesus, straight out of the textbooks from my school, sitting on the throne or whatever. And I don't even think there was anything said or anything. It was just like an image that came to me in my mind. And I was like, oh, I just saw Jesus. And my mom was like, instantly started crying, was all like happy, and probably it was a good thing that we were on South 9th Street, like where nobody ever drives, in the Swayze. And but through all that, like, looking back, I know that was just a product of desperation. Like, I was going through such a, like, probably the first truly intractable time of my life, where I was getting picked on constantly, and not receiving any help whatsoever from the Catholic school faculty, who were supposed to be all like peace-loving, Jesus-y kind of beatniks, right? But no. And and so, like, the only thing I could manifest in my imagination was what I was exposed to, right?
Yeah.
And it was just some kind of like inner attempt to rally my strength and get up the next day.
Yeah, exactly. Which I suppose would be another good benefit of religions. It's like, or things like that.
Well, my point is, though, you don't need the religion. The religion merely provided me with a certain particular visual aid.
Yeah.
But the perseverant voice, let's say, would be there in any fashion. Now, it might have shown up as Mr. T. That's
what I was gonna say. It'd be like an imaginary friend, right?
Yeah.
Like, you could. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's a very a natural human reaction to things, like developing an imaginary friend to help guide you. There's a great movie called is it Cloak and Dagger, I think?
Donnie Darko? Oh.
No, Cloak and Dagger, if I remember correctly. Like, this kid gets involved in this conspiracy revolving around an Atari cartridge that has some kind of secret spy stuff in it, and he inadvertently gets it, and so he's being chased by these spies, but he has this imaginary friend who's like a military guy who's strong and kind of like his dad basically,
Hmm.
and is kind of always there helping guide him and helping do things. And like at some point it's such a good movie. If I think that's the name of it, Cloak and Dagger. But like he's dealing with like, this is not just some kids his age, his contemporaries. This is like real international spy shit. These people want to kill him and they're
Hmm.
chasing him. And so his buddy is giving him advice and kind of like helping guide him. So it's like it's his little inner voice, but manifest in a kind of a physical way in a sense. Um, and that's a good thing. As long as it
Yeah.
doesn't go forever. There's what's the movie Inside Out? Have you ever seen that?
Mm, I don't think so.
Like a girl. Oh God, I there have not been many kids movies that have made me cry, but that's one of them. It's a tearjerker, like, but it's kind of joyful tears. Um, I highly recommend Inside Out. Such a good movie. But in that movie, the family is like constantly moving, and or the little girl has to move away from all of her friends and stuff, and she has this imaginary world, right? And it's sort of like you see the half of the movie is this imaginary world like looking outward through her eyes and trying to do things and stuff, and like it
Hmm.
I don't know, it's really interesting. But
Did you have an imaginary friend?
um I had stuffed animals that I kind of like treated as if they were real, like
Hmm.
alive. So yeah, in a sense, I did. I didn't like, even today I sort of have a sense of something like that. There's sort of my other self that I talk with to
Uh-huh.
solve problems and things. It's the like, I always say I'm an idiot, and I kind of am. Like, but I have my other self who knows everything, right? And I
Hmm.
talk with it, and it answers. Like, it's basically me talking to myself, trying to resolve issues or work through problems or troubleshoot something or build something. Um, and it's such a benefit. Like,
Yeah.
anybody watching me build something will hear, or like working on my car or something like that, I'm talking to myself constantly. And it's almost like, so for instance, working on a car, like when I'm talking to myself, it's like as if I'm an instructor teaching people how to do this, right?
Uh-huh.
Like
Yeah.
I'm explaining like hey, this is here we are in auto shop, and I'm going to tell you how to undo this thing and take this thing off, and it kind of helps me stay focused and stay calm, um seeing it from that perspective.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
if you're just if you're all
I
in your
actually do
head.
that too.
You
Um,
do.
yeah, like well, for me, I always imagine like uh what I would be telling my child, like teaching them how to do something. Like, oh, hey, this is something you're going to come across from time to time. Here's what you got to do, like,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of walks me through the steps.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe that's because like maybe my dad did that for me or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had like 7 imaginary friends at one time, like, and I don't remember their names or if I had named them at all, but I do remember like standing in line for the water fountain and
Mm-hmm.
telling the other kids like, "Hey, leave some space here. I got 7 imaginary friends behind me," and they were kind of like, "What?" Had
Yeah.
to go overboard a little bit there.
Yes.
But I always had a problem with loneliness too, so it kind of makes
Well,
sense, right?
yeah. And I think it's healthy. Because I mean, what's the alternative? As
Hmm.
long as you don't,
Loneliness.
well, yeah, as long as you don't completely withdraw into that, where at the exclusion of real friends, right?
Right.
Like you should be able to have an imaginary friend that's like still there, even if you have other friends. Um,
Yeah.
and
And I fully came up with that just because I heard of the concept of an imaginary friend. I was like, oh, that might be fun. Like
yeah,
it's not something I think I would have come up with on my own,
no,
like imagining like little ghost apparition people like following me around. And
I think that's something that's normal though. Kids have a pretty wild imagination.
oh
Uh,
yeah, I had a great imagination. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, and it's helpful to have somebody that understands you, and
Hmm.
who better understands you than yourself.
Speaking of imagination, uh, in young children, that's probably the reason why people want to introduce religion so early, is
Mhm.
because it's so easy to assimilate with a good imagination.
Oh yeah, yeah. To imagine God and Jesus or whatnot,
Yeah.
whoever, right?
When your rational mind starts to kind of erase a little bit of your imagination,
Mhm.
um, it's much harder to latch on to that sort of thinking, I
Well,
think.
and establishing that kind of pattern early on, makes it very prominent in your mind's architecture,
Mhm.
forever. Like that will persist.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. I mean, like we build our imaginary friends when we're little children, but they eventually vanish as we get older. Um, the reason religious thinking, like imagining deities and things, persists is because it's reinforced. You go to church, your peers are telling you all the time, and it's constantly feeding back. So you keep that imagination alive. And I think that's how these kinds of things stay established for so long.
Mhm.
Like even in the face of education that gives you scientific understanding and logic and reason and critical thinking skills, these things are still able to persist because your culture keeps reinforcing it, like props it up essentially. It's a
Mhm.
feedback loop.
It's actually probably a pretty healthy exercise to encourage people to have an imaginary friend, or let's say like at least an inner voice that they can establish a dialogue with,
Mm-hmm.
because that, I don't know, it introduces the suggestion that maybe there should be a devil's advocate
Mm-hmm.
in your thinking process.
Yep.
And if you're just voicing it to yourself, uh, without a devil's advocate, of course, you're probably going to kind of go with your first gut instinct, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which might not always be the best.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and people vilify the concept of a devil's advocate. And we did an episode on that like way back,
Mm-hmm.
like 4 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And really, honestly, it's a good thing. Sure, there's ways of using it as an asshole, of course, but I mean, any tool in your toolbox can be used to do bad shit with. So,
Yeah, yeah. A hammer can put a nail into something and craft something amazing, or it could crush somebody's skull.
right.
you know, like it's not the tool; it's how you use it,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. And
Giggity.
yeah, huh?
Giggity.
Giggity. yeah. Oh man, this has been a good
I like how
conversation.
it went into imaginary friends, because that's something I know we've never really talked about.
No.
And it's kind of a cool concept to dive into a little bit, because yeah, that I think it is actually super healthy
Mm-hmm.
exercise. And I think it really like opens a person up to new perspective. Well, especially in my case, when I had 7 different voices.
Yeah.
And now I sound like I've got dissociative identity disorder, but that's not true. We don't have that.
Mhm.
What? What just happened? Blacked out for a second there. Anyway, I
Mhm.
think it's pretty healthy. But no, seriously, like uh, I do this all the time. Like I argue with myself,
Mhm.
uh, try to challenge my own thinking. Uh, take in other points of view that I may have assimilated over time
Mhm.
and apply them. And sometimes I have changed my mind,
Mhm.
and that was all like kind of responsible, because or not, that's not the right way to phrase it. That was
Instrumental.
all possible because
Oh,
of the imaginary friend.
yeah, exactly. Well, and I think even as an adult, having an imaginary friend is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just that could be extremely beneficial.
Oh
Like
yeah.
just like the kid in Cloak and Dagger, right? Like he had that guy that's like the father figure who's strong and experienced and military and can do anything, and he could look up to him and get advice, and it'd be like, oh, there's somebody with me, no matter what, even in the darkest hour. I've got my friend by my side,
Yep.
and that's a good thing, which I think is kind of similar to what happens in religions too. People like they're like, oh, Jesus is with me all the time, beside me.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. Um, huh. Yeah, the whole bumper sticker thing. Jesus is my co-pilot.
Yeah.
That is effectively like an imaginary friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't say that to imply that Jesus is strictly imaginary, but like you creating that imagery in your head,
Mm-hmm.
like may just be like a manifestation of, like if you believe Jesus is real, like you're talking to him on a daily basis,
Mm-hmm.
could still be an imaginary friend phenomenon,
Yeah.
because I can easily imagine I'm having a discussion with you, Eric,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
even if I'm not, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like in that moment, you're an imaginary friend to me,
Yeah, exactly.
and you're a real person, obviously.
Well, yeah,
So,
but you can still conjure up that image,
right.
and yeah, I mean, I think whether your deity is real or not is irrelevant. The fact is, like, imagining they are can help you get through some really tough times.
Mm-hmm.
um get
Being real isn't even contingent. It's just, you know, it could be a character in a movie, but
Mhm.
if you know that character well enough to know how they would respond to your questions or what advice they might give,
Mhm.
it's useful.
Yeah. Well, it's like the saying, what would Jesus do, right? Like, oh, you
Yeah.
better live up to that expectation of Jesus's, uh what would he do, like, this is what we should do.
There's an interesting thing I've just noticed in my inner dialogue just now. We started talking about how religious thinking should maybe be used with discretion,
Hmm.
but imagination should still be wide open.
Yeah.
Like, and that might sound like splitting hairs, but it's not, because religion comes with like a rigid set of like constructs, right? Like there's rules and etiquette and
Hmm.
all this mumbo jumbo that goes with it that is just frivolous.
Yeah.
you know
Well, it's, yeah, it's like not really necessary for the belief, I guess.
Mhm.
I think certainly having like a doctrine of some set of rules is like, okay, as an anarchist, I don't believe in there being a global set of rules. That I believe in you build your own rule set. And I mean, ultimately you will land at the thing that most people will come to the point where it's like, oh, you will behave in the way that best benefits society ultimately, because it
Mhm.
also benefits you. Like, be selfish but not too selfish, be very giving because that comes back to you. Like,
Yeah.
ultimately it helps, and that kind of thing. So I think having like an internal doctrine is really important. Like, have
Mhm.
like I have on my wall the code of chivalry for the Knights of Sealand, which has all kinds of really good things. Like, and I look at it all the time, and I try to uphold that. Like, stick to that because it's good stuff. Like, it's basically like, be a good person essentially.
Mhm.
Um, but having that kind of internal like, I'm a knight of Sealand, right? Like, believing that, and that it's something that's not just, it's not just a whim. It's something that I can stick to and hold to, and like, I've got to uphold this because this is part of who I am, or something like that, right? And
Mhm.
so, like, with my own personal views about how societal structure ought to operate, it's like, okay, I follow as much as I possibly can my own rules. Like, I will never deviate from that, never initiate force, like, and the being like a benefactor of humanity, giving of myself and stuff like that. And I don't know. It's almost kind
Rules
of like
rules
being
are
a,
a funny thing because people think that it's one way or the other. Like
mm-hmm.
if you break the rules, you know exactly what will happen, right?
Yeah,
But that's not true either.
no,
Like you can you can cheat at a game of solitaire and
mm-hmm.
still lose,
Yeah, exactly.
you know.
Well, and then the only person who knows is you, and it's like, you're cheating yourself at that point. Um, well,
But even then it shows you it's the Kobayashi Maru, like
mhm,
sometimes there is no actual answer
that is true.
to a problem.
A no-win scenario.
Yeah.
Well, Star Trek again, the Prime Directive, right? How many times had Picard violated the Prime Directive? But it's like, it isn't a set in stone law. It's justified. Like, there is a historical justification for the Prime Directive. Like, why we don't do this, because of, look, this happened when we, interfered with other cultures on other planets, and it was a disaster. We don't
Mm.
want that. But there are situations where you kind of have to, like, put it on a scale. Which is more important? And
Right.
sometimes you've got to overstep those rules a little bit, even if they're your own.
Well, the thing I've always wondered about the Prime Directive, right?
Mm.
And for people who aren't intimately aware of what that is in the Star Trek universe, it basically says uh, it's an edict to prevent revealing yourself and your superior technology to a pre-warp civilization. So they
Yeah.
use warp drive as the benchmark for, I don't know, being like an advanced society, let's say.
Yeah, like, they've sufficiently advanced to the point where, like, yeah, if they have warp drive, they're probably okay with meeting
But
us.
here's the thing: if you just invented warp drive and you're still using like coal power
Mhm.
or something, like there's still plenty of primitive aspects, and you come like walking in with all your futuristic technology and you're thinking like, well, not violating the Prime Directive, but still you're like doing the exact thing that the Prime Directive is there to stop,
Yeah.
but it's okay because you didn't violate this like imaginary line in the sand.
Well, and that's where like I was saying, the Prime Directive, it's justified.
Mhm.
Like there are examples, and so you don't necessarily have to follow the letter of the law. You need to comprehend the purpose, right?
Yeah.
Like every rule ought to be justified. It can't just be an edict. It needs to have like some kind of backing behind it, some meat to it. Like the reason you don't interfere with other cultures that are less advanced is, well, because you could completely ruin everything. Like it
Mhm.
could be complete chaos. Um, but even there were even situations in Star Trek where there were warp capable civilizations, like the what was the one where it was a closed society, like in the shell, and they were engineered like, and they didn't want anybody coming in, and then so, but it's like, well, they were sufficiently advanced, and well, it kind of, the presence of the Enterprise crew actually kind of borked the system a lot.
Mhm.
Um, so it's like, yeah, that's where rules, like a law or a rule, it it's kind of the tip of the pyramid. It's
Yeah.
just it's the simplified version, the cliff notes, right? And then
Yeah.
behind it though should be the whole story, the legacy, like what brought us to this point, right?
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
if there isn't anything underneath it, well, it's unsupported, it's unsubstantiated, it's invalid essentially at that point. Just
Mhm.
like, oh, don't do this cuz, no, there has to be a pretty expansive explanation
Yeah.
behind it, that can be logically verified. It can't, it can't just be like, oh, this one situation, this one time, and that's why we completely changed everything. No, there's got to be, like, it needs to be something that you can, well, like laws of physics, basically.
Mhm.
You could take any of the laws of physics and test them for yourself in a variety of different situations, and they will always hold true. Well, until you get into like quantum physics and stuff, but well, that's still physics, I guess. Um, but it's like, it's easily testable and verifiable. Um, and yeah, well, now we're into like physics and stuff.
Well, rules are kind of like a tree, really, if you think about it. You know,
Mm,
if the Prime Directive is like the most important rule in Starfleet,
mm,
it's the trunk of the tree.
yeah.
Now, with a great amount of pressure from, say, like a massive windstorm,
Mm,
the super rigid, strong trunk of that tree will flex a little bit.
mm,
And sometimes it even breaks.
yeah.
And it really just depends on like how much uh pressure needs to be applied to this particular rule
Well,
before you
so,
say, you know what, it has to break here.
and there, well, it can be, okay. So, oh, I had a point. Like the Prime Directive, for instance, we'll take that. That's a pretty good example, actually. Um, it, it's something that is applicable 1,000 years ago, and it will be applicable 1,000 years from now. Like
Mhm.
you could picture yourself back in, like, some ancient time as yourself with all your technology, and imagine the turmoil you'd cause by going like back to the Middle Ages with like machine guns and lasers and tanks, like how
Yeah.
that would completely mess things up. And the same will hold true no matter what time period you're in. Like that's one of those things. These rules are timeless. They're based on culture and society. Um, so it's like it's one of those things. Like I said, it has to be justifiable and it has to be logically verifiable. And something like that, I don't see the Prime Directive ever becoming obsolete. Is my point. And those are
Mm-hmm.
the rules for society we should craft. Things that it really doesn't matter how society changes. Our set of rules are basically timeless, um, and
Because
will
it's
apply no matter what
general
happens.
enough. It's
Yeah.
general enough that, like, but that also leaves it open to a lot of interpretation.
Well, it's like, for instance, don't murder, right? That
Yeah.
is I don't think that's ever going to be like a societal rule that will ever change. It was always bad in the past, and it's always going to be bad in the future.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't matter how society changes or evolves, like, don't murder will always hold true as being like a valuable and valid rule.
But then is the death penalty murder?
That's something you would have to pass it through that filter, like analyze it, because I mean, maybe it is like an eye for an eye. Well, because I mean, one could argue, well, we're into a whole different territory, because that's kind of an ex post facto action, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you were standing there and you saw somebody with a knife starting to stab somebody and you shot that person to stop the stabbing, everybody would agree that that's justifiable, right? You saved somebody's life. There was somebody intent on murdering somebody and you stopped it. That's fair. Now, if that person over there stabbed somebody and nobody saw and they killed them, and then later on it was discovered that that person did it, and we apprehend them and we hold them to trial, and then we kill them, right? I guess it could be argued that it's really no different.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's no different. Like, so it's just that time has passed in between.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say, like, I mean, honestly, I think the death penalty is pretty extreme. But and it certainly shouldn't apply to anything other than murder. Like if actual murder should be the only reason the death penalty would be carried out.
Yeah. Like direct murder, not like tertiary or something, like the concept of treason.
Oh yeah.
Met by the death penalty is ridiculous.
No, it's just that's just a violation against the state. That doesn't.
Yeah,
that's nothing.
Yeah.
Well,
in fact, I would argue that any law that exists to protect the state should be broken.
Yep. Yeah. I know. Yeah. Be a
because
dissident.
The state isn't like a living, breathing entity that is deserving of treatment as such.
But my president said the government is us. It's us. We're the government. Yeah, right. Oh man, go ahead. And
YouTube should think we're trying to advocate breaking the
law. No, this is all hypothetical, of course. Yeah, but that's an interesting thing. I know when it comes to like the death penalty, I think diplomacy should always be our first option, the first avenue that we travel down. Like, maybe some people would seek vengeance, because in a way the death penalty is kind of a vengeful act. And it's not like a direct reaction, like in the moment that you're witnessing somebody about to be killed, and in order to keep them from being killed, you're going to kill the killer. Like, no, it already happened a while, like sometimes a long time ago, and now we're like, yeah, we're going to deliberately, premeditatively kill you in response to something. And I would prefer if the options of like trying to rehabilitate somebody, give somebody a second chance, like, should always be explored when possible. I know it's not always possible, but forgiveness, we want society to be better. And that's the thing. And in fact, a lot of family of murder victims, they do forgive the killer, and don't necessarily want more bloodshed, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, it's better to just be like, hey, look, I forgive you, we'll figure it out, than to just kill it more. Like, stop the killing. Can we just stop, please?
Right. And it kind of begs the question, with the whole theme of this episode, whether or not that sort of tendency to forgive a killer is rooted in religion or not, or neither?
I would say what you just said, neither. I mean, I think it can be, but there's plenty of people who are non-religious who would forgive somebody,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
because it's the better way. Be the better
Yeah.
man. Take the high road.
It's a pretty strong statement to make the argument for like having a well balanced education of, critical thinking and mythology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, my humanitarian um, behavior and like the beliefs I have are actually kind of sourced from my Christian upbringing. I saw a
Mm.
lot of people around me who talked a lot about helping people and being good and da da da, but they weren't. And I'm like, I'm gonna be that person that does good and helps
Yeah.
people as much as I can. And I don't do it because I think that like God is gonna give me some gold stars in heaven. Like I don't care about that. I do it because it's the right thing to do. And it feels good. Like it feels good
Yeah.
helping people. And I think, okay, well, it's sort of pay it forward kind of thing. Like if I lead by example, right? Doing these things, like eventually when I need help, somebody will help me. They will be myself, uh, you know,
Yeah.
helping somebody.
Yeah.
And I think, lead by example. Don't just talk. You got to live, like be the change you want to see in the world, essentially. Um, and that's where like it's like I don't like the idea of official hierarchical structures and governments and things, and defer all of the good deeds to some kind of behemoth organization and expect them to be able to carry that out. No, personally, you yourself, get up off your ass, go out and make a difference. Everybody can. You don't have to do it monetarily. You could, everybody knows stuff. Everybody can help a person with something. Help somebody.
Yeah.
Teach people. Like that's the only way we're going to make this world a better place. And be a leader. Like it yeah. I I'm gonna
Yeah.
get up. Like I'll get off my soapbox there, but I mean seriously, like that. And we don't need religion to do that. Like we
Yeah.
can basically have the benefit, all the good stuff from religion without the bad stuff, and without the like, putting your mind in a cage, essentially.
Yeah. Well, in my case, my sense of altruism did not come from my Catholic upbringing,
Mm-hmm.
even though that was, theoretically part of the lessons there within. Um, all of that really came to me most profoundly when I began thinking in more agnostic terms and critical thinking terms, and just paying attention to empathy
Mm-hmm.
above all.
Yeah.
Um, and none of that was like, empathy wasn't even a word I was aware of in my religious days,
Yeah.
right? Like I didn't even know that was a thing or
Mm-hmm.
a concept. Um, and that's, yeah, that's pretty telling too. Like, why isn't that core concept of our survival as a species more of an integral part of the teachings of religions? Like,
Well, yeah, because yeah, I think that altruism and empathy and things like that are actually inherent in human beings. I think that we have that, and but through education and things like that, we should be developing that more, enhancing that, bringing that out
yeah,
in people, not just say, oh yeah, just assuming, but like
yeah,
that's something we need to cultivate, essentially. Like
mm-hmm.
there's fertile ground there, but you do need to cultivate that, pull the
Yeah, yeah.
weeds and dig the ground and get the rocks out and stuff like that, uh,
Mm,
and prepare it to grow a nice crop, essentially.
yeah.
And that's how minds are. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, we're all over the place with this one.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew that was like a cool topic, but I did not expect it to go so deep
Yeah.
and
I mean, it's still
all over the
again,
place.
as with everything where we meander through all these different kind of thoughts, it's like it's all connected.
Yeah.
It's all connected together. Yeah, man.
Religion, politics, morality,
School.
critical thinking,
Hmm.
imaginary friends.
Imaginary friends. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like I love that concept of imaginary friends as being like a positive
Hmm.
thing.
That's something. If you're still watching, people, our viewers, um, if
All
you
one
had
of
an
you.
if you had an imaginary friend, like tell the story in the comment section. Like, let us know about your imaginary friend and how they affected your childhood, or maybe you still have one and you're an adult. I don't know. Um, and maybe I think here we go. Maybe we should just all create an imaginary friend.
Honestly, yeah. Like now that I think about it, like and have a discussion about it, I kind of feel like that's like a missing piece,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Well,
not that the phenomenon isn't still there. I do still have inner dialogues and such, but
mm-hmm.
to actually
behave as
manifest
if
that,
they're tangible.
yeah.
Like, and that's a thing too. Like, as we age, we kind of lose our imagination. Like, it, and that's something. It's like that. Maybe this is an exercise in keeping your imagination alive
Yeah.
and vibrant. Is craft an imaginary friend, and yeah, like, because you have to actively work on that.
Huh. Yeah. That's a good point. Like imagination does wane with age,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes me think like if that's the case, it's probably because of creating all these rigid pathways,
Mm-hmm.
these neural pathways in our brains for how things are done, how things should be, what our expectations are, and blah, blah, blah. And all of that just erases imagination.
Mm-hmm.
But the brain, luckily, is super plastic,
Mm-hmm.
and you could theoretically exercise your imagination to come back and work together with all those awesome inroads that you've made to critical thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Imagine
Sure.
that
Well,
imagination plus critical thinking.
and also, if you do create an imaginary friend, you should create one that is the idealized vision of yourself, of what you would want to become, and
Mm-hmm.
basically have somebody who would be a mentor of sorts.
Ace Rochford. What a
Yeah.
guy.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and who knows? It might actually aid with slowing down mental decline, like Alzheimer's and dementia and stuff like that, where you're keeping that your
Oh,
imagination actively fresh.
I bet it would.
Uh huh.
I bet it would.
Yeah.
The in,
Screw the crossword puzzles and all that stuff. Those games.
I mean that does help too
That's true.
because I think yeah, so the plaques that build up,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of at least well known now that that sort of thing contributes to dementia.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, like critical thinking can also, create cracks in the cement of these plaques, right? But so too can imagination, and that might be the missing puzzle piece, right? Like enforcing that imagination, like dementia, Alzheimer's, all that stuff, if you think about it in more simplistic terms, is really just the imagination trying to break through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, when my grandpa had Alzheimer's and he would be kind of transported back through time
Mm.
to when he was like a bus driver.
Yeah.
I would just ask him questions about like who was on the bus and what he was driving by. And,
Mm-hmm.
like I kind of dove into the imagination with him because like trying to wrench him out of that is not only pointless, but it's disruptive
Yeah.
and disorienting.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, now we've gone down even another avenue. Well,
Yeah.
and that's really, yeah, because what you said is my grandpa had Alzheimer's, and I had a similar experience. Like, he couldn't remember what happened yesterday, but he would kind of wax thoughtful and just remembering things from the past. And I remember sitting there, and it's like he started telling me a story like it happened just yesterday about like getting lost down a particular road. He knew the road names and like the exact model of car he was driving and like the time of night and stuff, and with perfect clarity.
Wow.
All these things. He was telling me this story about getting lost out in the country or something like that, and it's like, that's interesting. But anyway, yeah, maybe we've gone down enough pathways here that I think we have a pretty solid episode.
Yeah, we're maybe on the brink of solving or curing Alzheimer's, but it's probably time to call it a night.
Yeah.
Well, for you, day. I guess.
For whoever. I mean, whoever's watching, it's night or day somewhere. So, or transitioning between the two. Yeah.
Well, that was a hell of a cool episode.
Yeah. So, well, I guess we'll call it a day and or night, and yeah, enjoy this song on the way out.
Leave some comments, deep sink divers.
Hanging tight to what you believe, can't get no release. Feeling uptight, I get no reprieve. A life without peace. Think for a second what you want in your life. It's manifested. Take a moment, listen just twice for another way to get in. The rebirth of a soul depends on letting go, taking inventory of who you were. Stack